Afternoon, everybody. This is Paramedic Pat. Decided I would tell you a story today from out in the front yard. As you can see over my left shoulder, over in this way is my bird feeder, and underneath that's the squirrel feeder. Today's episode is, I guess you can entitle it Surprise. But it was in a way. What happened was it was in the afternoon. My partner and I had been running calls all day long, and we were heading back to the station. It was rush hour time, and the part of the town we were in, it was fairly congested with traffic at all the major intersections, and we were just cruising along. I think it was in early spring, so I think we even had the windows down. We're sitting at the light. We're 5 or 6 cars back from actually getting through the light to turn left. And luckily we had the windows down, but I noticed a commotion behind me. I heard horns honking and decided to kind of look in the mirror and see what was going on. And I saw an old, kind of ratty looking old Ford pickup that was trying to get through traffic. And he got up to about 3 or 4 cars behind me and jumped the center curb. There was a center median that had a curb on it and about a foot or 2 of concrete. And this truck forced his way up over that median strip into oncoming traffic. Luckily, the light had just changed to where there wasn't any real traffic on it yet. And on that corner just to my left was a gas station / muffler shop, if I remember right. And this truck pulls up into there, and it just caught my attention, and just wondering what was going on. And as they came to a stop, a woman jumps out of the passenger side of the truck and is holding a child, and not an infant, but 2 to 3 years old, and this child is limp in her arms. And I know that's not right, of course, and just as I look over there and trying to kind of assess the situation, they're screaming and hollering, "Hey, ambulance, come here, we need help," screaming and hollering. So I quickly reached up and turned on the siren and the lights, and I jumped the curb myself. There was no room for anybody to go. It was so jam-packed at that intersection. So I jumped the curb also. And we pulled up into the parking lot of this old gas station. And it's like several other times when a baby or a small child was involved. The mother hands me, the baby's in her arms, limp, and she just hands me the baby. Well, 2 things I had noticed as I got up close. I noticed that his right arm, from the elbow down, his right arm looked all swollen and inflamed. It was red, it had streaks in it. It was obvious it was infected. The first thing I did, since this child wasn't moving, is that I listened right up to my ear. Is he breathing? And it's like happened on several calls involving children. I could hear him trying to breathe, but I also could hear all kind of rattling, and that's the term for hearing that sound, that gurgling sound that you hear when someone's got fluid and down in their throat and everything. And the baby was pale. He looked really bad. It's obvious he was not moving, maybe even barely any air. And I turned, and my partner saw what was going on, and he runs around and gets in the back, and I step up into the back of the ambulance with this baby in my arms, lay him down on the stretcher, and I listen again, and there again it sounds like he's got a blocked airway. And it came from experience that I could tell what it was, or what I thought it was. But I didn't have time to ask questions. The main thing was getting this baby to breathe. So I reached up and turned on the suction. We had a suction. It was a big round plexiglass type container, had a bag in it to catch the stuff, and had a little pump motor on the side. And you just had a switch, and you flipped it on, and had this rubber hose, and you could normally we kept like a tip on it. It was a hard plastic thing you could stick down in somebody's mouth and suction out. And then we also had catheters that were very pliable that you could go down in, especially for children and old people. You could go down in, and then you put your thumb over this little hole, and it would create suction, so you could really kind of control the amount of suction that was going on. So we kept one of those catheters up behind the suction, so I grabbed that, stuck it on the end of the rubber hose, and went down in this baby's mouth. And as I did, I got down, and then I put the suction, and I could see all this white and yellowish mucus coming up into the suction catheter and into the tube and going into the tank. And I suctioned and suctioned and suctioned, and then I pulled it out from it. You don't want to suction for more than 10, 15, 20 seconds. And I could see that he was starting to move a little bit of air. In the meantime, my partner, Ben, has turned around and he's getting the intubation equipment ready. He's got the kit open. He's got an ET tube about the size for a baby, a 3 or a 3.5. He's getting the laryngoscope out. He's thinking ahead. He's thinking we may have to intubate this child. And that was my thought too. But anyway, I went down one more time and hit that, kept pushing the thing to cause suction. A whole bunch more yellowish, whitish, thick mucus comes up from out of the airway of this baby. And I suction and suction, and finally he takes a deep breath. He takes a fairly deep breath. And I'm like, okay. And then he actually has the laryngoscope and the ET tube in his hand, and you need them. No, I don't, not at this moment, hang on. And so one last time I go back down in and still get more gunk out of this child's airway. And finally he starts breathing, and he doesn't completely clear up, but he's moving air good. He pinks up. His color returns from the pale pallor, as they used to call that, and he pinks up, as we call it. Now his mother's standing there, and I finally have a chance to, I guess a minute or so had passed, and I finally had a chance to look up at her and say, okay, I've got his airway cleared. He's breathing again. And they're like, well, what happened? I said, well, he just had a blocked airway from all this mucus, but it still was drawn to his arm. From the elbow down, just swollen 2 or 3 times bigger than it was. You couldn't hardly see his fingers. And I said, what happened? Well, he had surgery yesterday. This is the dad starts talking. He had surgery yesterday. And when we got him home later that evening, his arm, we had surgery, the surgery was on his hand. And later on that evening, it started to swell and look bad. And we called the doctor, and he said, don't worry about it unless he gets worse. Well, he had obviously gotten worse. So they were trying to get the hospital, trying to avoid calling the ambulance. They'd got stuck in traffic. He quit breathing because he was so full of mucus. And just by chance, just by pure chance, Ben and I were at that intersection. Now, I don't know if when they pulled up into the gas station, if they would have thought to have called 911. I'd like to think maybe somebody else would have. This is in the days before everybody had a cell phone, so they didn't have one. So I don't know what would have happened if we hadn't have been there. I don't know. I think that baby probably would have died that day. But that's not the point of what I'm saying, is that the doctor had told him, unless he gets worse, don't worry about it. Well, he got a lot worse. And supposedly from some surgery he'd had the day before. Now, once I got him suctioned out, I put the baby on oxygen, and we roll out, and then within a few minutes, he's gurgling again. There's fluid all in his lungs and in his throat again. So all the way to the hospital through this very heavy traffic, and Ben's going across, breaking intersections and everything else. He's playing a song on the siren, that was for sure that day. But this baby was in very critical condition. And I kept suctioning, and I kept giving him oxygen, and came real close a couple times to go ahead and intubate me. But I decided not to, and I managed to keep his airway clear as we arrived at the hospital. But after that was all done, I thought about if I had been in the same situation with one of my children, trying desperately to get them to the hospital and not knowing what to do or how to help or whatever, and how helpless that mom and dad must have felt at that time, knowing they needed to get him help and not being able to get there due to traffic. Like I say, it was lucky that Ben and I were there. We were just casually driving back to the station. Another second or two either way, the light changing, us deciding to take another route home from the one we did, that would have been a different story, because I don't think that the baby probably would have lived to get to the hospital. Now, I don't know what happened, how the arm got infected. It was obvious that whatever that had happened, the surgery or whatever, had become extremely infected in just one day. Now, that seems kind of unusual to me, but it did. And there was nothing I could do about that. The only thing I could do anything about was to get him breathing again. And Ben and I were able to do that. There again, working as a team. He was one of my good partners. And I do miss him, because he did die a couple of years later from leukemia, unfortunately. The baby, I don't know. I'm assuming he lived. I'm assuming he got better. I didn't check up on him, but we got him to the hospital alive. And I hoped and prayed at the time that the right treatment would be done to him to where that infection would go away. Well, that's another one of the critical patients that I had involving children. It seems like they kind of came to me sometimes. Well, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And this is Paramedic Pat, and we will see you the next time I put a story up. Paramedic Pat here. If you enjoyed this story, you'll really like my book, Life, Death, or Somewhere in Between, True Paramedic Stories, available on Amazon.